Welcome to the Midlife Pilot Podcast. We are glad you're with us. What is it like to become a pilot in your 40s and 50s? The challenges are unique for those of us in midlife, but so are the rewards. Hosts Ben, Brian, and Ted talk learning to fly, growing as pilots, and the joy of flying to destinations. The purpose of the podcast is not to teach, but to share knowledge and experiences of being a midlife pilot. Join the Midlife Pilot community and listen in every week. We are not CFIs or particularly intelligent, so if you want to learn how to fly, talk to anyone else other than the hosts of a podcast. Even this intro was too challenging for us, and we used a robot to do it. Okay, checklists are complete. Let's get the show started.
Hello, and welcome to episode 76 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast, where we talk all things flying and aviation in midlife. My name is Ben. I am a commercial-rated pilot living here in the Atlanta metro area, flying a Cessna 182 we call the Beast. Joining us tonight, as always, we have Brian, a private pilot in Nashville, with a tailwheel endorsement.
Endorsement it is.
Endorsement. Home of the Bachelorette, Super Charlie. He's flying a Cherokee 180 named Lucy. Hey, Brian.
How's it going, Ben? Have you ever thought about how your name is past tense?
Yes. Yes, that is not the first time that's come up in my life.
Okay.
Well, it has been.
You're saying it has come up before in the past.
It has.
Okay. How you doing?
Has been.
How you doing? I know it's been a rough day for you.
A little tough day, but it's okay. I'm with my friends.
Yeah.
Joining us tonight as well from the left coast, where I just came back from, the west coast, sport pilot extraordinaire, our friend Ted from Portland, flying the CTLS we call the Egg. Hey, Ted.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm good. I don't want to ever hear any more Portlandians complain about how gray and cloudy and rainy it is there the whole time. Brian, I was out there. I never saw one cloud. It was 75 for the high, 60 for the low. It was perfect. So don't let them tell you anything else.
No, it's funny. Like when I lived in Seattle, I remember many years ago, I lived in Seattle for a few years, and it was, and I got out there in about this time of year, and I thought, this is great. Because the summer there is the most glorious possible summer incarnate, especially if you grew up in the South like I did and we did. I mean, I remember I rented a house, and then the landlord was showing us the house, and they were showing us how to open these windows in this house and everything. And I was like, there's no screens. And they're like, yeah, you don't need those here.
Yeah.
We had a guy at our group last week who just moved just outside of downtown Portland, and he's like, and he moved from the Southeast, and he goes, yeah, but it doesn't have AC, which apparently I guess a lot of houses up there don't have central air. Is that correct, Ted?
Historically, very few houses had AC here. Over the last 40 years, it's changed, especially the last 10 years. So, yeah. But you know, the thing is, people visit and they come in the middle of the summer and stay in an Airbnb, and they're like, this is the most amazing place ever. Great. Come back in January.
Right.
And see if you make it. If you do, great.
Yeah.
Well, a few housekeeping items we like to cover at the beginning of each episode. We broadcast live on YouTube every Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. We've had some crazy schedules, so we're doing it on a Monday. The live show, when you watch it on YouTube, we've got a very active chat room. It's open for your questions and your comments, so we invite you to join us there. The audio podcast is at iTunes, Spotify, and wherever fine podcasts are found. So please give us a subscribe, a follow, and then would be really awesome if you could leave us a 5-star review. That's how word gets out. You know, I'm out there with signs on the street corner saying, please leave a review. So doesn't seem to be working very well, but so I'm going to beg and plead here as well.
On the corner, you say?
Yes, on the corner. We love getting feedback. You can email us at midlifepilotpodcast@gmail.com. You can join us on Patreon and join our incredible community that's been built there by joining us at patreon.com/midlifepilot. All of this can be found on our website, and you will also be able to find this in the show notes. So please check those out. Brian, you been flying at all?
Yeah, I did a little bit. Sometimes you're in a spot where you know that you want to fly and the weather's going to be good. But sometimes, let's just say from a budgetary standpoint, it's probably not the best idea to follow all of your dreams right now. And all that being said, I had a great weekend of flying. One of the things that we did that I was very happy to do is we went over to Gallatin, Music City Executive Airport, where I did my tailwheel training. Drink, if you're keeping track. I said tailwheel. X-ray, November X-ray. And the Nashville 99s chapter was doing a plane wash. And of course, if you have the opportunity to support your local 99s chapter and get your plane washed, and it's just a 20-minute flight away, absolutely worth doing. And it was great. We had such an amazing time. There was lots of kids running around and fun to be had, and we also got a clean plane out of it. So it's pretty great. I did feel a little bad in the sense that the people that were doing the belly of the plane, they come out after that and they're wearing it, It wasn't bad. I mean, the belly wasn't too bad. I actually asked about this because I said, I had a feeling that sometimes people might take advantage of these situations where, you donate $150, but these people are going to be stuck under that plane forever, right. Just greasing it out for years of neglect or whatever. Ours, we did pretty well not terribly long ago. So it was just the first layer of buildup. So totally reasonable, but either way, they were wearing it. There was also the hilarious thing where kids, the really little ones, they'll just wipe one spot over and over, like the left front part of my left main wheel pants are the cleanest that they've ever been. So it was great though. It was really, I don't know. I just really appreciate all those women in that organization and what they do. And it was honored to do anything to help them. They had a little bake sale going and all that. And it was just a fun little outing that's a little bit out of the norm of maybe things that I would do. So it was great. So that was a nice adventure. And then otherwise, I did some night flying. I did my night currency, which is hard to do in the summer.
Yes, it is.
God. It's like Alaska or something, So got my night currency done, had some fun with that. I had a pretty interesting experience there. There was nobody at the airport. And at John Tune, it was just dead. And so it was great. They had me coming in, landing on 02. And then, I think she pretty well knew that I was going to be doing full stop taxi backs or whatever. And she said, well, if you want, you can just taxi. It's calm winds. So she's like, if you just want to taxi down to 180 and just let me know when you're ready and send it back the other way. So I was doing that. I was just
figure eight,
landing one way, doing a 180, coming back the other way. And
wow,
it was a lot of fun. And it's nice to just, I don't know, there's something about when you're on with the controller, they're about to leave in about 20 minutes and there's nobody else around and you can just talk like people, Yeah. It was really,
they're bored
really
out of their mind. They love having the interruption, just makes the night go by a little bit quicker.
Yeah. So then when I was done and I taxied to parking and the line guys came out, you could tell that nothing had happened there in a while. Two of them ran out, to see what I needed or whatever and say hello. And the first thing the guy, a lot of those guys are pilots, with much more experience or certifications than I have. And so I respect those guys a lot. And he walks up, I open the window and start talking to him. The first thing he says is, "Nice work out there." I was like, oh my gosh, there's so little going on here at John Toon for the first time in forever. Those guys really had nothing else to do but just to sit there and watch me do kind of dive bombing, short approach night landings, going back and forth like I own the place. So it was cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I had some good flying times.
Very good.
Sounds like a few bored people getting a little loopy at the end of their shift.
Yeah.
So
it was great.
Ted, you've been able to get up a little bit. I think I saw you on the Creeper Bot.
So let me give you a tableau of things that happened.
Please.
44 years ago, the last weekend, is when Mount St. Helens blew up, lost 1,500 feet of the top of the mountain and deposited it in a lot of different places. Thankfully, it was mostly pointed away from Portland, but still got a couple inches of ash like snow. So there's an air show going on at the airport, but when the TFR ended, I went out, figured I'll get an evening flight. I went to fly and go look above the mountain. It's like, what a great time on the day of the eruption, the anniversary. So I turned toward it and climbed, and got to 10,000 feet, and all I saw was clouds. So I turned around and went home. So that didn't work out very well. But next day I went to brunch, took a couple different passengers.
Wait a minute. You went to go fly in honor of the volcano erupting.
Went to 10,000 feet, and
how poetic is it that you get there? You're like, I can't
see nothing.
It was cumulus clouds and not ash clouds, right?
This is like a reenactment. I'm going home.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sorry, I just had to know. That struck me as your
interesting call out.
So
I just loved how anticlimactic the whole thing was. But, yeah. And of course, the airport was pretty empty anyway because of the TFR and half of it being shut down for this air show and all the military hardware on the ramps and everything else. And so it's just me out there flying. Went brunch the next morning with a couple different friends that were with us. Ran an errand to the coast. Oh, when I was doing that, I was headed back out from the airport, and there was a rental plane right in front of me to take off, and it rolled out. It was on the numbers. I'm like, this thing's bouncing a little weird, and I threatened them to get off the runway because their front tire was close enough to being flat. So. Turns out it was probably only about half flat, but I wasn't comfortable with that. So
not be a good landing.
So I thought that was a great experience to kind of threaten somebody to not take off at that moment.
Wow.
So I got their spot and took off faster, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, then went back down to the coast, did an errand, and then went out and landed on the beach. So
again,
was looking forward to doing that. And yeah, that's so much fun to do.
So cool, man.
Yeah. So
very cool.
Had my coffee, got out, stood around, met some people that were, everybody thinks it's weird. It's a remote beach, but there's still a couple people around. So they want to come up and see the plane and all that. So
they come running up like, are you okay?
Yeah. Well, there are posts at the very beginning and the very end of the beach section that are like, this is a runway, and there's an arrow pointing to it, but it's a really wide beach. So most people don't even see it.
Right.
But if you're walking past, you see a post. So, yeah.
So, well, cool. One Dull Geek wants to know, Brian, why not stop and goes?
Great question. And, I thought about it too, when I trained at John Toon and did my night flying training there with an instructor, we did that. We did stop and goes. I have since, especially at night, and especially with depending on which runway you're going and the options you have, I want all the runway every time, even if it's daytime. I really hesitate to take intersection departures or anything, even if it's just a excruciatingly long runway. I want it all. So I'm not whatever I'm saving, by doing a stop and go, it's not really, I don't know. For me, it's like, if I had an issue and I really could have used that extra 1,000 feet and I'm, on my way into the river or whatever, I don't want that to be my last thought. So that would be
what's the two most useless things to a pilot? The runway behind you and the altitude above you.
Yeah.
Neither does you any good. So I agree with you there.
Yeah.
Wanted to get into our topic tonight. And by the way, I flew to Savannah 2 weeks ago, was in Portland last week. So it's been a little while, but for those that you, we'll hit the feedback next. But for those of you who have this on your bingo board, I will be departing for Apalachicola tomorrow.
Oh,
with friends and getting a little relaxation time and getting a little fishing in. So I'm actually really pumped about it.
Yeah.
So we did get some feedback last week, and we wanted to cover that real quickly. I would like maybe Brian, if you want to tackle. We got some great from a listener that is not in this country, which is really cool.
Yeah.
We have a gentleman from Sweden who goes by the name of Gunnar. Do you want to take that feedback?
Yeah. So Gunnar S from Sweden. It probably took longer for the email to get here, but yeah, so he says, I just a month ago decided that my budget was there for taking a PPL license. Taking a PPL license. I suppose he means really earning it, right? As opposed to just taking it.
It might be cheaper to take someone else's. I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm sure
like
there's
taking a class.
I'm not going to, anybody that does not speak English as a first language, I don't mean to be. Yeah. So anyway, I just a month ago decided that my budget was there for taking a PPL license. I've been looking around a lot, found a small airfield with a little club that I seem to like. I've also found the theory course to go to. So a few days ago, I found your podcast. Thanks for the great inspiration. Now I hope to fetch my new glasses within a month, and after that, take the medical so I can start this fall. Keep up the great work.
Yeah, the EASA stuff is a lot. Like, there's like
what do you know about that?
Law theory, and I just know there's a lot of, I don't know. It's like being in middle school and looking at college and being like, I don't understand all this.
And they have multiple tests, written tests that they have to take. To your point, Ted, they have, aviation law theory, they have weather theory, they kind of take everything we do in one test, they split it up in different ones. And I think they may even take a deeper dive into each of those subjects. So I've heard that it's much more difficult.
And they usually pay per landing or per touch and go, though the clubs will have a, built into the price or built into being on the field. So he's at Scoved Airport. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. There'll be some links in the doobly-doo. It's a 5,700 foot runway. It's 100 miles inland from Gothenburg, which is 2 hours by car or an hour by high-speed train. So,
high-speed train. How about that?
I had to look that up. Yeah, that's quality.
I would love to be able to take a high-speed train to the hangar.
Oh man. Yeah.
So, and I can't quite figure it out. Maybe those in the chat can help, but I feel like that there's got to be a joke that involves the group ABBA and something about like sort of A to B and back to A,
It's your cross country.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's really awesome. I'm so glad that, we definitely don't think about ourselves as having that much reach or what, we have definitely not been thinking about an international audience, even though I know that we do have one to some extent. So I really appreciate those that are not in the United States listening to all of our accents and all of our ramblings and our just very, very poor interpretations of aviation law and weather and everything else that you guys clearly do a much deeper dive on.
And I will add to the challenge of making a joke is take a chance on me. ABBA, point A to point B. There's got to be something in there. I agree with you, Brian.
I like that.
So Gunner's never going to listen to this again.
Yeah. Can you really blame him though? To be honest with you, do we want to tackle the next one?
Yeah.
Ted, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So we have many Sams. I usually say we have CFI Sam. We're going to hear from a different CFI Sam in this pod. So we've got Tennessee CFI Sam. We've got the one that Wendy and I reference, who's the Portland, Oregon CFI Sam. This is a Sam from New York. So Sam D says, I just listened to episode 74, Pressures, External and Otherwise, and I like your approach to risk management. Even as a high-time pilot, it gave me food for thought. A couple comments and one slight correction. Analyzing the risk management of a cross-country flight, Ben mentioned the high-time engine and said that you might be more comfortable with a new or newly overhauled engine. I actually feel the opposite. I'd be hesitant to take an engine with less than 200 to 300 hours on it versus one with 1,100 hours. Mike Bush has some very good articles on this. Again, no right or wrong answer, and I like the thought process that you guys were using. Maybe an oil sample came back that wants a recheck, or other work recently done. Number 2, an airline pilot saying, it doesn't matter what the weather is, we're going anyway. Not true. Though we rarely cancel weather, it does impact the route, fuel load, alternates. Number 3, you mentioned pilots going out and doing instrument training without a CFII. Please don't do this. One of the common things I've seen when training someone for instrument, especially if they had a younger CFI, is a lack of BI skills, basic instruments. Too often, I have to go back to this, if not emphasize in training. Spend a lot more time being precise in your VFR flying and mastering your airplane's avionics. Great show.
I think that's great feedback. A couple of things, and I have heard this before. Wendell Geek has said this before, that he's nervous about new time engines. Maybe it's just a personality affectation. I don't know. Our plane's got 400 hours left on it, and it just, I personally feel more comfortable with a newer engine. And maybe he's right. Maybe I wait till there's a couple of 100 hours on it before I do a big water crossing. But I don't know. I think it's perception, and everybody's going to have a slightly different view. And for me, I'd rather it be newer than older.
Yeah, I think there's room for, a lot of it's what are you comfortable with. I'm definitely more of that Mike Bush camp. I was not happy that my mechanics removed part of my engine and put it back on just because of that infant mortality issue.
Right. And Sam called it out. There's no right or wrong answer like this.
Yeah. And
I agree with that. I think it's just a personal choice. And was kind of half kidding about the airline pilots not.
Yeah.
So
that remark was, he said, so Ben, you had said something around that, airline pilots, doesn't matter what the weather is, they're going,
right,
or something.
Right.
And then he's basically coming in and saying that's not true. And we rarely cancel weather. Though we rarely cancel weather does
impact the route, fuel load, alternates, and things like that.
Of course.
Yes.
So what I like about the feedback is that it keeps things honest, but at the same time, this is a great opportunity to take pause and think about what this podcast is and who's involved and what claims we make and what claims we do not make. And then ultimately, we definitely deal in hyperbole and broad strokes often. And I don't want that. There are other places. If you're looking for 100% foolproof CFI level accuracy on everything, it's not going to be here. But that's kind of what it's about is we're doing the best that we can. We have a lot of CFIs in our community and in the chat. And, we have people keeping tabs on us. I think if we go completely off the rails in the moment, somebody will stop us. But no, I mean, it's just one of those things where when you're talking about as many things as we're trying to cover in an hour's time, and you're trying to just make a point and move on, you'll find that you don't have the ability to really get into the depth of things often. And so you will paint it with broad strokes or just say something we're just kind of hanging out here, right? Like we're not doing an official report. So we will speak in hyperbole. We will exaggerate things. And sometimes we'll be wrong, which we're happy to be. So all that being said, I really appreciate this feedback very, very much.
Absolutely.
I think Sam got that too. You know, it seems like a lot of this is kind of nudging on that, which is, and we're wrong all the time. And I think he's got a great opinion about the instrument training in the CFI and CFII, and
definitely.
He brought something up in that, mastering your avionics. I think a lot of people take that for granted. And when it comes time, you may know how to plug in a flight plan, and you may know how to access all the different features, but I bet you haven't, if you haven't gone through your instrument training, I bet you haven't loaded an approach and done vectors to final and then get switched to an initial approach fix and how you go about doing that. That's huge. That's an excellent point. And that's stuff that you can play around with while you're VFR and getting used to that. So I think that's a really good point.
Speaking of, Ben, in the flying that I just did the other day, I got in the plane. This is one of the, we talk about one of sort of the things that can happen when you're in an airplane partnership. Well, you have to be ready. Sometimes they will leave things set in a certain way that they had it. I got into the plane. I was actually emailing my airplane partner about this today. I was like, hey, so everything was all in VLOC, and there's no GPS steering. There's a bunch of other stuff going on. And I don't know if I ever mentioned it in the community. I think at one point I posted a picture of a switch and just said, does anybody know what this does? I think, if anything, I know I sent it to the previous owners, which they weren't even really sure. But I found out that this very small toggle switch that is almost hidden will actually kick the GPS steering back into place. So it's something about the linkage between it's like in preparation for the 530 and the autopilot and the G5s to talk, because it's not a Garmin autopilot. And so it's got to have different data sends, and then our heading control is not done by the G5s. It is done by the rotary encoder on the autopilot. So there's just a few things, but all that to be said, my point has been, it's like, I'm still trying to, in preparing for eventual instrument training, I'm still trying to figure out, like nobody's plane is even perfectly clean, right? There's going to be weird things that have happened to it, or weird ways it's been wired or whatever. And you got to kind of uncover it.
Yeah. And instrument is not where you want to uncover that. You want to try to find out as much as you want to do that.
Yeah. All right.
Why don't we go ahead and launch into our topic? We broadcast or we announced that this would be Flying Gets Boring. What do we do? And it's not, we've covered this in the past in several different episodes, but we thought for this episode, and we'd love to hear from the chat, it's more about, you have an afternoon off. What's something you could go and do, or you have a day off, whatever the case may be, that's not just lapsing the pattern or practicing a stall or going over here to get some cheap gas and coming back. What are some things that we can do as pilots that add a little fun to it, or just keep it from being boring? Now, I know, Brian, you take issue with using the words boring and flying in the same sentence.
Well, you know what, to be fair, I have an issue with the word boring altogether. I was talking with a friend of mine just earlier today about how in preparation for this topic, I'm trying to wrap my head around it. What is this idea of being bored? It's insane. We're all alive, floating around on this rock. It's absolutely bonkers. Everything is completely wild. You can just stare at a wall and just think about things, and it's wild, right? Like, I don't know what boredom is. I especially don't know what boredom is when it comes to flying. You're in a tin can with a spinny thing on it, and you can talk to people, and you're going through the sky, and you can feel the air, and the sun's moving around, and it's incredible. I cannot. Let me rephrase. Let me reposition it. Let me reposition it. Flying is not boring. I can go out there and do circles around a mountain and just stare outside all day long. I've got no problem with that. It's coming up with a different plan than you normally do. Yeah. Instead of doing the same thing over and over. I'm not saying the act in and of itself is boring. Yeah.
Well, we're trying to mix things up. Go ahead, Ted.
We chose the title because we do hyperbole. So,
I mean,
because it isn't boring, but you do want to go out with plans. And I think it's easy for us, if you've got a week or 10 days or 2 weeks free, to go and come up with a great flying adventure, right?
Right.
But what do you do when you've got the day or the evening or a small amount of time like that?
The first thing that came to my mind, and I don't think Lord Alpha Juliet's with us this evening. He and I were 3 or 4 weeks ago. I was supposed to have gone down to tour the Atlanta TRACON, and we're going to do a loose formation flight because he was taking his club plane. I was going to go to Savannah from there, but I ended up going to Savannah, but not there. And I kind of wanted to, I thought it'd be fun just to go up, and I'm not saying we're going to be 3 feet wingtip to wingtip, but, get into a loose formation and start playing around with that. We could do that in an afternoon. It's just something a little bit different, something that you need to focus on. He has done it before. I have not. So there's been some instruction. Then maybe bring a CFI up that's had some practice in this as well. But I think that's something that I would be comfortable with doing without a CFI. And, if it's half mile on trail, I did that at Oshkosh. Yeah. That's really not that big of a deal. I would get closer than that. But you get my point, is that would be the next thing I'd like to do, is just to go out with a friend and let's just go to somewhere together and, maintain X amount of distance from each other the entire flight.
Yeah. We did that with a friend, and we made sure to talk about it beforehand. And okay, I will always be to your right and above you, or I can't remember if it was above or below that I decided. If you have a problem, you should normally brake left. And we set up those things beforehand. And also, out of the planes of movement. So you're far enough away. So you can still fly and cross paths and be safe if something like that happened. You're not doing your Blue Angels flying. And with only 2, because once you get 3, there's a lot more coordination. But yeah, 2 with a half mile is great. Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever the case may be. One Dog Geek, I like this. I haven't done this in a long time. And who knows, I may do it going down to Apalachicola. Everybody drink. Personally, I've had a ton of fun doing flights that I've made many times, but pilotage and dead reckoning. It's so cool to feel like I know the area. I'm really starting to enjoy the PNDR, the pilotage and dead reckoning flying. I think that's a great idea. And I believe One Dog Geek and Lord Alpha Juliet, they were planned on meeting up. There was how they have the poker runs in airplanes where you stop at different airports, you get cards. Well, they had a competition for pilotage and dead reckoning. Whoever could do a nav log and time and distance and fuel burn and fly the route. And they had people with binoculars at these different waypoints and you had to fly, no GPSs. And there was a competition, basically, who could flight plan the most accurately and hit the points the best, which that sounds awesome. Like a fun afternoon.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I was having fun with pilotage yesterday. It was like 40 miles to breakfast, and there's some things to fly around and all that. But my friend was in her plane and she's like, "What heading are you on?" I was following her. I don't know. I'm visually flying here. I'm literally not trying to follow a heading. I'm trying to stay in this valley and over here. And that was really fun to do that rather than try to follow a magenta line or try to stick to an exact heading. And it's great to fly the whole way like that. And then there's the airport. I never had to look at the map. So that was fun.
I like, I like the idea of just being forced to be more mindful and aware of your surroundings. And that brings you more joy, I think, and more enjoyment out of it, because you're not just crossing over territory that happens to be between you and your destination while you're doing other things. And there's infinitely interesting topography and small sights to see. I don't know if you remember that video that I have on my channel with my friend Georgia, and she was talking about how, her observations were so childlike and innocent, but she was, just looking at the driveways and like, why did they set up their driveway? Why does this driveway go in here and come out there? Or, just letting your environment create all these interesting questions about what's around you. That's honestly what I find to be the barrier between me and ever being sort of less than completely wildly enthused is I can't even take in the most mundane flight. It's all overwhelming to me all the time.
That's probably one of my favorite videos in your whole library.
Yeah.
And it's not because she was the one that was narrating it. But,
it's the only one.
No, to that exact point, I can find myself with the autopilot on, I'm being a safe pilot, doing this exact same thing. I look outside and going, wow, people still have above ground pools. I didn't think that was still, you know what I mean? Just all these observations. When you're driving in your car, you can pick one up every now and then, but when you're in an airplane and you see so much more below you, it's a fun time to start letting your mind wander a little bit.
Yeah, especially I would say maybe one thing you can do when you're just looking to tool around for an afternoon flight or something is not just think about everything from an aviation perspective, but think about it from places that you're probably going to go and visit on the ground. If you know that you're interested maybe in going hiking at this particular place, then go do an aerial survey of places or, that you might find interesting. Or even if it's just going to visit a particular little town, fly over a little town. And I've always thought about maybe going there just driving, right? So you can almost use it as like a means to do pre-production for terrestrial travel, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. To me, it's endless possibilities.
I sometimes I'll do almost the reverse of that, which is take a picture from above of something I see on the ground that I want to research. And
yeah.
It's like, what is this warehouse doing out in the middle of the country? Like, I should be able to go on Google Earth and figure this thing out. And what is that business and everything else? So,
and then the feds come to your door.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There's northwest of our airport, there is a mountain, large hill, that's been leveled at the top, and there's a perfectly square reservoir right in the middle of this. I mean, it's just the architecture of why and how they did this makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. And I haven't Googled it yet, but when you mentioned that, I fly over it like 3 or 4 times, and I write it down on my clipboard, research this lake, go find it, go, and I always forget to do it. But that's a great point.
Well, check the show notes, Ben, of your own podcast, and we'll remind you to research.
So, well, let me pick up a comment from Area 12 Aviation here, which is a new name, I think. So, hi there. They said, I go to 3,500 feet and go through as many maneuvers as I can think of. Then I end it with landings, wheel, 3-point, 1 wheel at a time, and short field. A fellow tail wheel guy gave me a spreadsheet to track it. I like that. That's one of the things that I had written down that I want to talk about is what I called, here's our hyperbole again, be a test pilot. Don't mean literally be a test pilot, but go up and try to discover what your best glide is. Use, if you've got true airspeed, use it. If not, use indicated airspeed. Just hold that speed for a few thousand feet down, time how long it took you to get down that, and then you can calculate your ratio from that. You don't actually want to use the distance over the ground because there's enough wind to just really complicate that. But using your true airspeed is a pretty good simulation of that. And I've gone up and I've done that a bunch. And now that I've changed my propeller, I need to go up and do it again. And that's one thing that I enjoy. Another example of that would be actually testing your rate of climb, because your rate of climb varies significantly by the amount of weight in the plane. Do you really know what that number is? Is it the same every time? Probably not, but it's a cool thing to test. And again, you can just use your indicator or your true airspeed and time how long it takes you to get to 1,000 feet. So those are some of the more nerdy things that you can do.
I like Aero Grizzlies. On occasion, my flying buddy will send me to go get them takeout from a random airport restaurant. And as I tell people, if Kroger had a runway, I'd use the airplane to go get groceries. So it's kind of the same thesis there. So
I have to hit this from Wendell Geek. He said, by test, Ted, do you mean confirm what the POH says? Sure, if you have a POH that's accurate enough for that. If you have a POH that just assumes your best glide is about half of what it really is, you kind of have to figure out those numbers. Yeah.
Very cool. So anything else about new things to do in airplanes? I'm not going to call it boring, but something different.
Different things to do. I do like the test pilot thing, Ted. I like, I think everybody has some lingering questions about either something about the particular performance of their plane in a certain condition, or buttonology. It's a good time to just go up and practice or familiarize yourself with deeper buttonology things when it's not the weight of, well, if I mess this up, then I'm going to get us off track for our trip, or, whatever. It's nice to be able to play around with those things when it doesn't really matter as much. So I do like all that. As much as, people might think that it's rote or not interesting. You guys know me. I love pattern work. I love landings, and I can't get enough. And even in the spectrum of pattern work, I have tried in the last probably 6 months so many things that go so much deeper than just going around and doing the landings, right? Like, I'll do things like, okay, here's a power off 180. Okay, now from the same point, I'm going to pull it down, power down to say 1300 or 1500 and just let it sit there. So it's kind of like a power off, because I'm not allowed in my brain to sort of touch it. I'm just going to set it at 1500. So it's kind of a partial power kind of scenario, and get a sense of how that looks and feels. And actually, I'll even go to the point of treating it like almost like a stuck throttle. I'll set the power for say 1400 in a power off type of dynamic, and then come around, and I won't pull the power back when I'm ready to land. I'm just going to hold it off and hold it off and hold it off and let it settle and settle and settle in such a way that then if I were in that situation, I know how much power I can still have in and comfortably get it down and just, be in that strange position of hovering. Get ready to drink again. My tail wheel experience for wheel landings really helped with experiencing that patience with power just over the runway.
Yeah.
So doing that, but in a tricycle gear and a docile plane like a Cherokee, and I don't know. There's all these little kind of micro experiments, I think, that you can constantly be throwing at yourself within the realm of normal flying kind of things. But these new wrinkles can wildly open up new awakenings about your airplane or your flying or other things.
Juliet Echo Foxtrot mentioned the passport stamp program that a lot of states have, and Georgia does not have one. And the one thing I did remember that I am going to start back up with, I started early in my flying career, but AOPA has an app that whenever you go in an airport, you just open up the app and you check in, and it kind of has a logging process, so to speak. But that's another way to just, I'm still working on the 104 public use airports in the state of Georgia. So,
well, that is really you doing your own passport program.
Right.
It's checking off every public airport.
Yeah. And using an app to do it with, to maybe to have somebody to track it for you. So, anyway, I think those are all great suggestions. Again, flying doesn't get boring. It's just doing the same thing over and over again can become a little rote. While you're actually flying it, flown to Apalachicola many, many times. Everybody drink. But I still love it and take a slightly different route or different views. So I think it's still cool.
Can I throw one more thing out there?
Yes, please.
We've mentioned this before, but the Google My Maps where you can create a Google Earth map of every airport that you've landed at. That's really great. What it's done for me is it's helped me see patterns about, it's like, you know what? Like I rarely go, for whatever reason, I don't go southeast very much. I'm either going east or north or not quite northwest. Like, I don't know, you start to see gaps in the plotted points of where you've explored for whatever reason, consciously or unconsciously.
Should I be offended by that? Never come in southeast?
Hey, look, I've flown to your steakhouse airport. I mean, good Lord.
You're right.
You have a steakhouse at your airport.
Yes, I do. Yes.
You've gotten called out by a tower at the airport.
Maybe that's why he didn't come back.
No, it was not called out. It was kindly greeted. But he said something about, we've been looking out for you.
Yeah.
We
heard about you.
Yeah, we heard about you and that you might be coming.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's always a good thing too. Is just if you keep a map of everywhere you've been, then you just isolate places you haven't been and go to those places, passport program or not.
Yeah.
And it's more than just going to the airport. Support those little towns. Go to those little places.
Oh yeah.
Get into town. Find the cool sort of diners and barbecue joints and weird places and cultural newness, and I don't know, just explore.
Do the aviation version of Diners and Dash. What is that, Guy Fieri?
Oh, yeah.
Diners, drive-ins, and
drive-ins and
diners, drive-ins, and
and something else.
Yeah. We're gonna move it along a little bit. Ted, I think you told me we have a bag of words episode.
Oh yeah, let's get a little bit of feedback from our favorite CFI named Nate Ballard.
Oh, okay.
He's not our favorite CFI. He's our favorite one who is named Nate Ballard.
Yes,
just want to be clear on that.
Sorry about that. I did miss that.
He really was bridging between this episode and some of the others we've done, and we'll link to those in the doobly-doo. But some of the kind of bigger things you can do when you're bored. And the first is go get uncomfortable with doing something new and open your wallet. Seaplanes will cost you $2,000 to $5,000. Tailwheel will cost $2,000 to $5,000. Multi-engine will cost $5,000 to $8,000. Basic aerobatics class is $4,000 to $6,000. I know that Josh did some upset recovery in the aerobatic planes.
Yeah,
and that's a great example of that. I'll tell you that any time building pilot who's headed to the airlines would love to give you time in a multi because they can log that as dual because you're paying for it. So that's something good too. And then moving towards one of our previous topics was about bucket lists. He said, hit some of your favorite bucket list aviation spots or trips. New York City skyline route, Bahamas, Catalina, or you can cross the border into Canada and listen to ATC speak French and English. The prep and planning alone for any of these will get you out of boredom town. Yeah, so that was episode 18 that we talked about the bucket list destinations. And we've actually been to some of those now. I know some of those that Brian talked about, some of those that I remember writing in before I was a host.
Wow.
It's kind of cool to...
Dreams come true.
Exactly. Yeah.
You just believe.
I guess I shouldn't have put the Nepalese airport. What's that? Lukla, where you go to climb Mount Everest. Yeah, I shouldn't have put that one on my bucket list. That one's just a bit out of reach, I think.
What was the
one day? Yeah.
Mine was Fogo.
Fogo.
Yeah.
Why? I'm trying to remember.
Where is that?
It's in Fogo.
Oh, okay.
It's Newfoundland.
Oh yeah.
Fogo Charlie Delta Yankee 3. Charlie Delta Yankee 3.
Okay.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
That is a long way from anything. Yeah.
Especially in the Cherokee.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
can be done. Can be done.
Yes.
Very cool. So is it time to move to bag of words?
Yeah. Isn't it bag o words? Yeah.
From a Patreon member she's in the chat.
Yeah.
Roving Horse Henna is her chat name.
So that's Wendy.
Wendy,
and
yes.
I usually just write down her name as Wendy Horse, even though it's not, but it's close enough, and it keeps some anonymity in there. So she has been doing instrument work and training, and with my original CFI Sam from Portland, and she was out with some low bumpy clouds with icing at 5,000, which is crazy low, and absolute helmet fire. So let's play that clip.
Over to departure.
Over to departure, 448. Yes?
Yep. They're going to say Cascade departure, 92448, 1700, Eugene 1.
Cascade departure, Skyhawk 9er, 2448, Cascade 1700, Cascade departure, Eugene departure 1. I don't love a helmet fire.
I mean, that's true bag of words. That's where it came from, which is it's all the right things, just where you're going to put them. And I also noticed that pause that you get when you've been flying different rental planes and you're turning really quick to see what the tail number is because you just cannot remember it. Yeah.
I love the singing. And I'm going to append every bag of words moment I have with singing of I love helmet fires.
Get that drop and play it, get the button in your plane to play it. Yeah.
Well, I think what strikes me about that I really like more than anything is that it's being taken in stride, and it's real easy, to beat yourself up. And even though you can still beat yourself up, you can have a good time while you're beating yourself. It sounded like she was having fun. So
absolutely. There was that pause that we've all had, that you've realized that the words that are coming out of your mouth are not in the right order. And your brain is working furiously to catch up, to get them back in the right order or say the next thing correctly. And I've absolutely been there more times than I care to remember.
There's something about when you're holding on the push to talk button, there's some sort of like a white flag feeling about it. If you really get hogtied midstream and you're holding it, and it's really just kind of a prayer, but you're hoping that it all comes together, but there's going to be that dead air for a second, but then that dead air becomes almost magnified as dead air. And then, you have to you got to let it go.
When I was coming back from Savannah a couple of weeks ago, there was a guy talking at Atlanta TradeCon, and you could tell he had a lot of experience. All of his calls are good, but he had a PTAC, an instrument approach clearance, and it just came out, and it was like couldn't get him in the right order, and then he just said, "I'm just going to shut up now." It's like, I give up. The white flag that you mentioned, Brian, that's exactly what he was. I'm done.
Arrow Grizzly said it's the brain mouth disconnect button, or as my Oregon CFI Sam, got to have some way to disambiguate the Sams, but as Oregon CFI Sam said, it's not the push to think button,
right?
And I'll put a link to his humorous, sketchy type video, pretending to be a student who uses a push to think button, because we've all done that.
Oh yeah. No, I remember that video. That's good.
Yeah.
So, what do we want from people, guys? What we want from people is we want feedback. You can go to our website. The answer is always just to go to our website, midlifepilotpodcast.com. But what do we want? We want feedback. You can send us audio messages. You can send us your bags of words in a text format. Just write it out, what happened. Or if you happen to have a recording, we would love to play that. So just remember that this is largely driven by and for you guys. So send us the things and we will make it happen.
Tell us what you do to make your next flight a little bit more interesting than the last. or something different.
If it's legal.
If it's legal. It doesn't have to be legal. We just won't read it on the air.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's great. We did forget to mention we do have one new Patreon member. Sridhar S is a new Hershey Bar member of the Patreon group.
Awesome.
We're glad that you're with us. We appreciate your support. And I think awesome. That should just about cover it. Next week.
Well, let's get some advanced feedback for next week. If you're hearing this, next week we're going to talk about what should you do when you're thinking about starting flight training, but don't know when or if you can. So this isn't once you've done your discovery flight, what do you need to do next? This is step 0. What are you going to do to start that? Hopefully there's some good feedback here.
Yes.
That's good.
So thank you for that, Ted. Yeah. All right. Thank you to the chat room. Seen a few new faces and a lot of familiar faces. We appreciate y'all joining us. Anything else, gentlemen, for the good of the order?
I'm good. Unless you want to read real quick, Roving Horse Henna's comment here where she basically says, and that was the end of me on the radios for that flight. The weather was all I could cope with. So thanks again for that. That was great.
Thanks, Wendy. We appreciate that. That was really
secret
helpful.
Is I got the whole GoPro of that, so I got to watch the whole thing. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, very good. Well, I do want to give a quick memoriam. We had to put our pet down today. Casey, never an easy thing to do, but he was a good boy, and I just wanted to give him a quick shout out. So thank y'all for allowing me to do that.
Of course.
And that's it. We will be back on a normal schedule next week, next Tuesday at 8 p.m. What to do if you're from 0 hours to 1 hour.
Yeah.
Guys, thanks for joining me tonight. It's been great potting with you. It's the best community in the world. It's nice to have friends close by during times like this, and I want you to know both. I appreciate you.
Likewise, buddy.
Hey, thanks.
All right, guys. Signing off, episode 76 of the Midlife Pilot Podcast. Good night, everybody.